Hey, good morning, guys. Blogging Buddhist here. I hope everyone had a great weekend. Lord knows I had a pretty good one. Just got home from traveling out east to New Brunswick, so took the weekend to recover and get some rest. And I thought that this morning I could take a brief moment here to talk to you a little bit about some of the insights I gained while I was out east. But before I do that, if you haven't done so already, please click the like button for this video and also click the follow and subscribe button for the actual channel so that anytime I upload a video, you'll get notifications. You won't miss any of them. So, um, on June 30th, my family and I decided to pile into the car and drive out to the East Coast. Any of you who have read my blog are likely aware that I'm actually originally from northern New Brunswick. That's where I was born and raised. That's home, or at least that's what's labeled as home, and that's actually what I want to talk about today. Um, I decided to chronicle our trip out because we drove out. As most of you in Canada may be aware right now, the major airports are not exactly favorable or an ideal place to be. So we made the decision. We bought a cargo box for the top of our roof rack, and we piled our two children and my mother-in-law into our SUV, and we took the highways and we headed east towards New Brunswick by car. Now, we drive a GMC Acadia. It's a pretty roomy vehicle, so we were by no means crammed into a Tercel, but our trip was not without difficulty, which you would have seen from any of the chronicling posts that I've put on my main blog over the past couple of weeks. I actually wrote a post for every day traveling out and every day traveling back. And then once I was back and I had time to reconcile and think about our trip, I wrote a substantial post about our actual time out in New Brunswick, what we did, what we didn't do, what we missed out on, things of that sort. One thing I didn't touch on in this post, and that's why I'm making this video here this morning, is that there's a strange thing that happens when you reach adulthood and you try to go home. I think I wrote in one of my posts, Bon Jovi wrote a song called "Who Says You Can't Go Home." Well, there's actually a reason why you can't go home, because home is a concept. It's an idea. It's not a place. Most of us, we tend to associate home with the place we were born and raised, and that's a normal instinct. And for a lot of people, that remains their home, especially if you end up getting a job and establishing a household and a family and stuff where you were born and raised, and that's great. Some people do that, and that's fantastic. At some point years ago, I came to realize that the economy and the job availability and certain other obstacles that were in New Brunswick made it as such that I wasn't going to make my life there. I wanted something more, and for that reason, I signed up for the RCMP. And I ended up shipping out west for basic training, and then once that training was done, I actually stayed here. I got posted out here in Saskatchewan, so I've been out here for 13 years. And some of the more physical differences is that obviously there's less water, there's less trees, and it's much flatter out here. And you don't realize it, but once you get thrown back into an environment like northern New Brunswick, where all the roads and highways are curved and hilly, and you don't have a clear line of sight for a kilometer down the road, it significantly affects the way you drive. Uh, but and the water. I mean, I spent my entire life living on the shore of a bay where I had access to beaches, I had access to open water, Appalachian Mountains on the Quebec side that I could visibly see from my side of things. Absolutely beautiful landscape, beautiful scenery, absolutely gorgeous. But of course, when we're young, we tend not to appreciate such things. And it's not until I left home and ended up going back for visits that I came to realize just how beautiful my hometown is. The big problem is that, as with all things, life changes. Life doesn't care about your plans. So I came out here to Saskatchewan. I started my policing career. Despite difficulties I had at the end, I like to think that my policing career was a success. I had a lot of good times. I learned a lot. I developed a lot before I ended up going into a different style of work, which is where I'm at now. So my family and I are in Regina permanently, and this trip was a little bit different from previous trips that I've been on. So in the past, whenever I've gone home, and I've been home a lot over the past 10 years, like usually at least once a year. And if I miss a year, uh, sometimes it'll happen that twice a year I'll end up in New Brunswick. I know when I was looking for a job, when I decided to retire from the RCMP, I applied to a number of things in New Brunswick. So I had flown out quite a few times for that. And the thing is, for the most part, I've never had a free moment when I'm back home because I'm visiting family, I'm seeing friends, I'm doing things, I'm going places, I'm experiencing things, and I'm spending time with my folks. These are things that didn't really seem to be there this time around. I took some efforts. I messaged quite a good number of people to let them know that we were coming ahead of time, and then once I was actually there, once we were actually there in New Brunswick, um, a lot of these people either they weren't available or couldn't make themselves available or just no longer were in the area, which is a big problem too because I'm not the only one that left home. We came to learn that my hometown, the few last vestiges of economy or life that it had, have fizzled out. So when I was a younger lad some decades ago, the town of Dalhousie had an absolutely packed front street. There were storefronts everywhere. There were 2 or 3 department stores. There were offices, businesses, specialty stores, a couple of bars. Like there was all kinds of stuff. If you visited Dalhousie, you could start at one end of the front street, and it would take you 2 days to reach the other end because of all the stuff there was available. And it was a tourist destination, and it technically still is now. Like there's a campground down at Incharan, and there's still a lot of trailers, a lot of campers. People go there because the scenery is beautiful. But unfortunately, if you want anything or you need anything, you're going to find yourself struggling. And that's what happened to us while we were there. I mean, our first night, we had supper with my mother. We went to a restaurant called Pizza Delight, and it's a pizzeria chain that, as near as I can tell, doesn't exist west of the Maritimes. I'm trying to think here now, but I don't think I've even ever seen any of them in the Quebec provinces I've traveled through and stuff. But regardless, the point is, we had dinner our first night at Pizza Delight, but towards the end there, when we had eaten at Pizza Delight and we had eaten at the local truck stop, and we ate at a snack bar during our lunches and stuff, we started to run out of options. Like there was, and with 2 young kids, you want to keep it interesting, you want to keep it dynamic. I mean, the boys won't eat what's given to them at the best of times. I mean, that's kids, right? They'll look at stuff and their first impulse will be to say yuck. But yeah, we had difficulty finding places to eat. In fact, our last couple of days there on the Monday was probably the most difficult one, and we left on the Tuesday. So that was, yeah, on Monday, August 8th. It's not a holiday, it's not a special day, it's nothing out of this world. It's a regular business day, and Pizza Delight was closed, which is odd to me. Like I've managed restaurants, I've run retail businesses, I've done a number of things in my life prior to becoming a police officer, and the idea is that if you're not available to work on that day, then you bring in other staff to work the restaurant during your day off. You don't close up shop on a business day where you could potentially be bringing in more business, right? So we were pretty disheartened because Monday evening, like we thought we were stuck. We didn't know what we were going to do. We were considering just getting a pack of buns and some cold cut meats from the local grocery store, which luckily was still open. And then we were lucky enough to find another small chain pizzeria just outside of the immediate area. Otherwise, like you're looking at driving half an hour, 40 minutes to try and reach anything that was open. I was a little bit surprised that even Campbellton didn't have many restaurants open. I mean, you had your McDonald's, but we had eaten McDonald's almost every evening on the road coming out here because we would typically stop there for supper so the boys could play in the play structures for the ones that actually have their play structures open. But the moral of the story is that this time around, I found myself with a surprising amount of boredom. There was a lot of free time, a lot of time where we were wondering, okay, well, what can we do? Where can we go? What kind of things can we do? And like, we drove out to Hopewell Rocks, and which Hopewell Rocks, for those of you who aren't from the Maritimes or even from Canada, is it's a location on the southern part of New Brunswick, about 40 some odd minutes away from Moncton. It's an inlet that comes straight off the Bay of Fundy, and it boasts some of the highest tides in the world. So when the tide is low, the draw is that you can go down and walk on the ocean floor. But the rock formations are actually quite beautiful, and it's nice, and it's something to see, but it's a natural occurrence. I had been there a few times years ago prior to moving out to Saskatchewan, and when we got there this time around, we came to find out that there's an access gate now. It's staffed, and for the 5 of us to access it, we got charged $50, which, you know, I don't like to call myself cheap, but I don't like paying excess amounts of money for things that, you know, these folks are not providing a service. They're not the ones that put the rocks there or created them. Like, it's a natural occurring event. So why am I paying you $50 just for the benefit of walking through a muggy trail to get down to the beach and go see this thing for myself? And in fact, when I used to go in my younger years, I wouldn't have to pay. I would drive straight down. I'd reach the top of the staircase. I'd park there, and I'd just walk down to the beach. So that was a little bit disheartening. By the time we were done that, we looked at a bunch of different options as well, like Magic Mountain Water Park and the zoo and a bunch of different things. And to access a lot of these things, we were looking at a minimum of $30 per person. Like, it ended up being ridiculously and financially difficult to try and do anything. And then you couple that with the fact that none of the people that I had talked to or that I'd reached out to had actually reached out to me or had made time for us or anything. I mean, I did have the 2-3 friends that I got to see, and those friends are aware of my appreciation. Like, I do. I absolutely appreciate that these folks made the time to see me, whether it was over a quick coffee or just a quick sit somewhere to chat, or just in passing where we happened to see each other and talk for a little bit. There's a few people that I did get to see, and I appreciate that. I mean, it puts things into perspective in terms of knowing, you know, who's paying attention and who values you for you and is willing to see you when you come home, and the ones that basically like, oh, okay, he's coming home, so be it. This was actually the first trip to New Brunswick ever where I didn't get to connect with Sensei, and that was probably the most hurtful part. So, I mean, to his credit, he's got a life. He's got a wife, kids, grandchildren. He's got a life of his own. He's got things going on. But same with him. I had given him a heads up quite a bit ahead of time that I was coming. And every time I'm in New Brunswick, usually he makes at least an hour for me. You know, even if it's just an hour, just to sit, chat, connect, speak in some forum that's not through Facebook or through email, right? But yeah, this time he didn't. Once we arrived, I reached out to him and I let him know that we had made it to town. And he said, yeah, I have guests of my own here. They're here until the weekend, so I'm pretty tied up, but they're supposed to leave on the weekend, so I'll let you know. And then I never heard back from him. I mean, even now, it's well over a week after his guests were supposed to leave, and he's never reached out or contacted me to see if I'm still there. So, you know, little things like that have all kind of changed my perspective, and they've changed my dynamic. And it's made me realize that my home is here in Saskatchewan now. Like, I used to think of New Brunswick as home, and I was just here working. But, you know, my wife is from here. My children were both born in Saskatchewan, and it's where I've come to call home. And that might be a little bit unexpected, but it's like I often say, life doesn't care about your plan, right? So there it is, folks. There's some insights about my trip out east. If you haven't done so already, be sure to visit my main website at www.thebloggingbuddhist.com for daily posts on a variety of subjects. Thanks for watching.